Okay, this is straight into it. This is a rough start to a stream. No messing around today. Yeah, you're live. Just barely. Okay. How readable is that, though? That's the question. That looks like it could do with some resolution changes. .2. And that's that. .22. Editor, font, 22. No, editor, font, 22. What is... Code editing, font. Yeah, that's what I want to use. Duplicate. Save. Okay, we'll worry about that later. Let's do GitHub. That's connected. Okay, Streamlabs. Does that color look right on the stream? Okay. Go in here. Barely live. And that YouTube thing. We're doing that as well. Barely. And this. Messed around with the stream. Broke everything. Okay, I'm not advertising it anywhere else today because this is an embarrassment. Oh dear. Let's see. No, not top chat, live chat. Okay, so hey, so how you doing? How are things? So full disclosure, I wanted a new monitor for coding on because I was... Oh, shoot. I was struggling because the screen I normally stream on is a 24-inch 1080p monitor, right? And I was struggling with the size of it and streaming, and also the other monitor, the monitor I'm now on over here, It's a 4K monitor, but it's only 60 hertz, right? And I do appreciate 144 hertz when using an editor. It definitely makes a difference. So I started, yeah. So the monitor I bought wasn't an expensive one, right? Let's put that over there because I think he's logged into my Amazon. So it wasn't an expensive one, but it was a larger screen, right? So I'm like, okay, that's good. However, I went to stream and I thought, oh, hold on, can I get this sorted out? And I was testing it last night, and yeah, it was. I'm going to give the affiliate link. It makes sense. It makes sense to give the affiliate link if I can do that. But yeah, so I got the monitor and I got it set up, and it's 3440 by 1440. So I was trying to get the stream configured, and I went to stream earlier on, and it just squishes everything up. So even though the stream's at 2560 by 1440, it kind of squashed everything down and looked horrible. So I quickly, about 20 minutes ago, had to switch over to using the 4K monitor and making sure everything scales down. So the processor in this machine, it's a dedicated stream PC, so I've put as much resources as I can into making sure it scales everything down properly. What I think so far is it looks kind of washed out, which is ironic because the reason I wanted another screen is because the color on the other monitor was super washed out no matter what I did. So I could not win, it seems. So I'm going to have to figure out rearranging everything and maybe get the other monitor back on here somehow. Gonna need a bigger desk. Also, I need a dedicated platform for streaming and stuff, like with loads of space. So yeah, that was the adventure. Let's close that, otherwise I'm going to be there. So yeah, that is why I am going to be looking over here today instead of over here. So I will look. I've got the camera set up here with the chat on the other monitor now, right? The big monitor. So I should still be able to read it. I should be able to say to be able to speak to camera a little bit more, which I think definitely changes the way the stream works if I'm not looking in odd directions. However, I will be looking in this direction for coding, which actually doesn't work too badly because obviously the way the camera is. But other screens may be funky because everything when you change your resolution in streaming stuff, everything's relative to a layout. I've learned it does not scale or move around properly. So yeah. Let's see how this goes. So today is back to the Agile project management, right? As agreed, we'll do 2 days a week on water, drink water, which I will say I'm having a lot of fun doing. That is definitely something we will be continuing to do. I also realized that the 15th is rolling up fast, and I did suggest that I would do a coding challenge on my next day off. So I might post a few ideas in the coding challenges channel today and see if there's any votes on that. But if anyone's watching either on the VOD or live and likes the coding challenges, it would be good to get that feedback as well in the channel, because I don't want to be doing coding challenges when people dislike that aspect of the stream. That's never good to get people in. Other maintenance stuff. Yesterday I was tinkering with ChatGPT. So you will notice you have 3 kind of newer emotes. I was tinkering with trying to get the style right. So we have yes and huh and the free one that I put in there was an early prototype of the which was don't know, right? So yeah, I've been trying to add a little bit more to the stream. Also, I changed the logo on the stream to that little pixelated guy. The gamer aspect is something that I want to lean into. You know, it is, you know, it kind of works with my initials, the TBD gamer, in that I'm not gaming, I'm programming. I do love gaming. It is a passion. But it's just something I don't want to focus my energy on at this point. So yeah, so a few more emotes. Twitch actually tracks when they're used throughout Twitch, which is impressive. So there we go. That is 5 years. Wow. Okay. What else? I think that's it for now. I think I've done all the breaking stuff. How does the stream look? How does is the camera a relevant size? Is the text readable? Because obviously now this is coming from 4K to 1440p. It looks like it's not terrible on stream. Like, to me, on a 1080p monitor, it's readable, but I can tinker with the sizes. I don't know whether people watch me on phones, in which case you're not looking at the code very often anyway, or you're looking at me on a monitor. So yeah. Anyway, okay. Just realized the volume is weird. Okay, that does look like it is normal though. Yes, okay. Looks pretty good. Okay. How's the color? Does it look as washed out on the stream as it looks for me? Because on the screen it looks a really good color, but on the actual stream output it looks like it might be slightly washed out, and I don't know how to necessarily change that. Filters, add. Color correction, gamma lower. That might look a little better. Contrast, saturation. Change. I get. It looks like I don't have an option of previewing this one either. I can just do it. That looks a little richer. Yeah, that was better. Yeah, a little bolder. That's closer to what I actually see as well. Okay, so into Agile project management for the day. Still working on the create ticket component essentially. I need to get the events to work. So what I've done is I've switched things up a little bit on the eventing side. Right, I've referred to these as integration events. Now I'm being very explicit right this second, just to try and make sure that I get the ideas firm. Right, I don't want to keep referring to things as domain events and integration events, but this is an integration event. And what I've done is I've taken it away from tenant was created to being it's a tenant integration event and it will have an event source, right? The event source, not to be confused with event sourcing, is going to be the originating publisher of this message. Because again, the tenant could be published from other things, right? Things that affect the tenant or things that affect the user or things that affect it could publish the event, right? So the idea is that you cannot create a tenant integration event without providing a source, right? So what I've done is in my application. When I have tenant user was registered, I publish an event that says tenant user integration event, and then the name of this event, right? So the thing that triggered it. And then I provide all the tenant information. Or tenant user information here. Now, I am in two minds here as to publish a user, right? Because why? Because the colors look very bright. Yeah, they do look kind of now they look kind of opposite, don't they? Let's lower that a little bit. Let's gamma, let's tone them down a little bit. Oh. That looks healthier. I just looked over and saw the red text, and yeah, it doesn't. So in the in OBS, right? If I make layout changes to the scene, I can preview it, and then I can say, "Yep, now transition." With the colors, I have no option. If I'm changing the colors, I'm changing them in the live, and I'm not, and then that's it. And I'm only changing them on the capture. I'm not changing them on my camera for good reason, right? I don't want to be my face to be going all sorts of weird colors, but they shouldn't be too blown out there. They should be readable. On a 1080p monitor at full screen, they look relatively decent. That's still I've toned it down a little bit in terms of the brightness and the hues. Does that look a little bit more friendly? Purple does not appear for me. Purple does not appear. Let's have a look. Can't read. You can't read handle single or default async. Oh wow, okay. Oh yeah, I see that. Okay. Hue shift. That's going to change that. Publish async. They look purple. Yeah, they actually are blue. Which is interesting that they look purple. Hi Tick Tick, how you doing? My apologies for not getting back to you yesterday before you finished. I felt you were getting a little bit on the frustrated side, but I needed to get a cup of tea. You need a brew. You need a brew. Okay, this is. I'm going to remove the filter for it a second. Put it back to how it was. So that's that. It looks kind of washed out, but it should be a bit more readable. That's how we started the stream. Let me know how that looks. I'm going to put that up a little bit louder. It looks like it's going kind of quiet today. Okay, we'll go with that. We'll just leave that as is for right this second. But if you can't read anything, let me know. We'll increase size. Okay. it's weird because when you're streaming, your personal preferences for how you want things to work and how you want them to be have to take a back seat. And it means that sometimes, like, there is no good tooling for switching between profiles that quickly that's going to consistently work, right? Because ideally what I would have is what I would have less color and variety on the screen with larger fonts when I'm streaming, and then be able to switch away to a better thing afterwards. So I could create a theme, right? I could set a theme and edit my custom version of that, right? High contrast. That might be more readable on the stream. One dark vivid, one dark italic. There's all sorts of different things I could do to try and make sure that the stream is actually that might not be the worst. But then there's no way of switching to your personal preference afterwards, which is no easy way, because it will always mess something up. Rider has disconnected font sizes. Tooling, all those things are kind of challenging when it comes to getting streaming working. So yeah. So if there's anything you do want me to change or you feel would be beneficial, if you're looking at the code and actually paying attention to the code, yeah, I do care very much about getting that right. So the whiteness or contrast, it is washed out, right? It's kind of like light colored across the board. So if I have color correction, right, and if I lower contrast, that looks a lot darker. If I lower brightness and increase contrast, there we go, that's better. Lower brightness, increase contrast. Okay, how's that look? I'm going to pause until you say that yes or no that way, because I carried on messing around after I saw, okay, that's better. Very good. Okay, we're good. We're going to save that. Okay, no. There we go. Because again, it's a challenge because I see the screen no matter what, right? I see it in the way I see it. I can't appreciate what it is for other people to watch, right? And also, things like color blindness and stuff are very, very difficult to adjust for when you can't appreciate where people are coming from. Okay, so today, what I want to do is I want to kind of get these integration events up and running and moving more freely, expand a few of them, and then kind of try and plan how am I going to do promotion using this method, right? I may, hit some challenges, but that's kind of the goal. I need to kind of figure this out. And once I've done it once, then the other thing will be easier. So again, what I've done is I call that publish integration in this publish event. So that's kind of amusing. Publish integration. Right. So right now what I've done is I've got the tenant user was registered, the tenant was registered, right, being published. So this is an association, this is a tenant, and there's nothing more than that on the tenant, right? A tenant record only has a name. Verified and active are an internal concept to this piece. They're not public. They don't need to be public right this second. If I was to inactivate or deactivate a tenant, what I would probably do is delete it, because the source of truth is the only one that really cares about that information. The tenant user being assigned. So what I was thinking about this yesterday was, so a common pattern when using Kafka is when you want to do a delete, you send a blank keyed message. So I was thinking through this, when I was going to the tickets stuff, right? So on the tenant user receiver here, right, I get this and I say update tenant user. With tenant, I say update the tenant, right? I need to get more into the habit of doing a bit more columnar design. The tenant inside of my application, right? Tenants, commands, update tenant. I actually key the tenant, but I could use the identifier just as easily. That's interesting, Twitch. It's telling me on one screen that an ad's going to start, and on the other it's not telling me an ad's going to start. That's kind of impressive. But if you're doing a delete, right, the common pattern is to send a blank message with a key, right, suggesting that everything can be keyed. What I did with the tenant user is kind of a compound key, but I can't generate a Kafka key off of that, right? Because I don't have very much flexibility when it comes to making keys in Kafka work, right? If I go to my database, so realistically, what I'm talking about here is a design decision that will help or hinder me in one way or another, right? I have tenant users. I have an ID, a user ID, a tenant ID, a date added, last updated, right? I do not have an identifier on this table. So there is nothing keying this record. Realistically, if I want to be able to delete things cleanly, I need to be able to identify a message without the message having a body, right? If I'm going to do it the way I'm going to do it, right? So a message right now will look like this. Let me Visual Studio Code, right? A message or an event, as we're calling it, will look like this. There will be a event ID, which is a random GUID. That's just to give us some sort of tracking on that event. An event source, which will be, tenant was registered event or whatever. That's the domain event that triggered the need for this message to be published. So we could actually use that to track the source of events ultimately, so we know what published an individual event as well. And occurred on, which is again just a date timestamp to give us some indication without having the user who publishes the event be responsible for needing to know that. And in this case, we have a tenant identifier, which is a GUID, and a name, which is the company name, which is a string, right? That's what an event will look like right this second. So these three are common to all events. This is the actual object data itself. If I was to delete this tenant, how do I do that? If I'm always publishing this information, what does that even look like, right? Because again, a recommended pattern in Kafka is, so every Kafka message is like a key value dictionary, right? It has an ID, which can be anything here. I normally make it a GUID, and it has an event, which is data, right? Which in this case I JSON serialize. The recommended pattern when you're deleting is ID, anything, event, null. Right. So this ID is something you want to be able to assign. So if I do that, my Kafka piece needs a little bit more flexibility how it's keyed. Now you can with Kafka you can partition based upon key as well. So that is a fundamental design decision that could come back to bite me if I make this wrong now. So there's all manner of strength with this. Now what I've done in this current version is this is always a GUID, right? And right this second I believe I'm just randomly assigning it. Let's have a look. Kafka publishing, Kafka publisher takes a GUID. The key is the event ID. So I take that assigned event ID. So I'm assuming that I have the event ID, and that's just that. But now I can't link two objects together, right? By the same key. Kafka now can't dedupe either, based upon that, right? So that being a random GUID is not actually that healthy. So what do I do? Right? What do I how do I force a user to set that ID, and how do I want to make it always a GUID? And I'm thinking out loud deliberately here, right? I'm making sure that the things that are going on in my head are not just in my head, and I'm going to say, hey, here's the solution. What I'm doing is I'm just kind of brainstorming as to how do I achieve this. More complicated keys, right? Right now this is very much a GUID, but it's hard coded to be a GUID, right? I've made this Kafka publisher very much depend upon a GUID key, so I can't really change this very quickly without some serious overhaul. And this is where I get a little luckier in that I'm not using my my built library, because now I'd have to change all that and do NuGet package. I can explore these concepts without actually breaking those library concerns. And if something's useful, I can share them. So this reads pretty nice, right? It's useful. But two objects now can't be two versions of the same object can't be deduped. Kafka is now going to struggle because if I put topic compression, I think it's compression on. So the way that works is if you kind of always want the latest version of the object, you can turn compression on, and Kafka will remove other instances as it inserts the new one. So it will always keep one version in the queue, which can be useful, right, for speed and for storage. But using this, there'll never be any dedupe. So this was a bad idea anyway. If I want to keep a GUID, how do I do that, right? So what I could do is I could make sure that if I'm going to publish an object, it has a unique identifier of its own, right? So it means adding into this table an identifier, a public identifier, or a tenant user identifier, right? So if I add this, sorry, there's a little fly. I don't know where it came from. So if I add a new column, right? Oh yeah, I can't do that. And I call this identifier. It's a unique identifier. It's not null. New ID. That doesn't mean anything. I've got no records in there. It's fine. Then I could publish that information as my entity, right? So let's go and work that out, right? So in my domain for tenant management, I have my entities. I have a tenant user, right? Let's add my public identity, right? That adds the need for identifier, right? And identifier equals new grid, right? It does mean that this now could change as a domain event, right? Because I can use that ID. What I use this for right this second is I look at when I get the tenant user as registered, I go and get the the GUIDs from those IDs, right? Because I don't have those available to me when I create this because everything's internal, right? So I go and get the GUIDs and those are what I publish, right? But if I do it that way, right, this result is a published tenant user result. So this populates this object. So if I do public GUID identifier equals GUID identifier still don't like that pattern. And then we can do q.identifier, right? Because q in this instance is a tenant user record, right? That gives me that information now. So in here, I think what I need to do is in my default integration event, I don't need to do this. What I need to do is abstract that, right? I believe. On my face. So now when this happens, event ID, I've got two options. I can either set that or I can identifier get set, and then I can set that to identifier, right? Which is, I suppose that's a little bit explicit as well. That does document the fact that I'm using the identifier as my event ID, right? This also now means that I could do a delete, because now my a tenant user integration event as a delete. No, I couldn't. I couldn't do it that way, actually. No, I can't do it that way. That's a bad way. Because I'm always assuming that I'm going to yeah, that's not good. How would I do delete in this instance? I have no way of doing a delete using this style. I haven't even thought about delete. There's a challenge here. So there's publish async, which right now is hooked directly to Kafka. That's fine. This actually helps me, the fact that it is. This publish async goes in here and assumes it's got a GUID and a T event. It uses this try get topic from event type. So I'm always Hi Duelist. How you doing? Oh, that's ah. Nice. Let there be a tenant service in the domain project and the delete tenant method in this service. This service should publish the events after performing the deletion process. Yeah. I'm thinking through the scenario where I do need to delete something. The actual specifics of deleting the tenant, I'm not actually worried about right this second. I'm just worried about how I would do it. It's not bad for me to continue the way I'm doing it. I just want to make sure that I'm at least lining myself up for that event in the future. PJ, thank you very much for the Prime. For 12 months. How are you doing? Really appreciate that. Thank you. How you doing, Jay? Oh. Suffering. Indeed. Reading someone else's code is always a challenge, right? Because it's never the way you want it to be, no matter what, right? But React is not easy to read, in my opinion, anyway. So, yeah. How goes the agility? Well, being agile, right? I'm changing things on the fly. Right now, I'm kind of thinking through how I'm using my integration events in my system, right? So, what I've decided to do with Kafka, right or wrong, is I'm going to publish an event that is just the object that I need to publish with the data that needs to be published for that thing. So I would create a topic per thing, right? So if I want to publish things about tenant users, I publish tenant users. If I want to publish tenants, I publish tenants. If I want to publish a user, we'll get to that afterwards, I'll publish a user, right? That information is whoever wants to use that information can do, but they do not own that information. They never change it. They just consume it. But also there's a scenario where I delete something from the system and I want to be able to do an actual delete. The problem is, though, that I've kind of bound everything quite tightly to the fact that there is an event. Well, in a delete, you don't have an event. A delete is essentially await event publisher, publish async, null. Well, that doesn't really go very far, right? Because I have nothing to publish. So I need a key, right? What is the key? In this case, the key is result.identifier, right? So I need a GUID key to publish everything. So there needs to be a version of publish async that accepts. So we need a GUID key. T event is nullable. I'll specify that. Is it that way? No, it's not that way. There. I dislike nullability. T event, nullability. Brain, wake up. Yeah, I want to describe it properly. Nullable T. Oh, I mean, it's basically that. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. So that's now nullable. We'll get back to that afterwards. Doing it this way is kind of different in that I want to say if event is not null, then publish async no, not quite. So the challenge here is if I do it this way, I don't know I suppose I know type of T event in theory. because doing it this way, right? You have an issue in that you're saying, okay, await event publisher publish async tenant user integration event result dot identifier comma null, right? I suppose that works. We can still use the T event. We just, see, I don't need to solve this problem right this second. I'm solving this because it will bug me if I don't. And I do not want to leave myself in a position where a week from now I come back and I'm like, oh, I need to delete the oh no. Oh, I've got all that work to do. How do I do it again? So doing it this way, basically that changes to that. That changes to that. That goes away. This is now key. This is still valid. The only difference is value equals, no, that's that datetime.utc now. That's fine. This is so we can control the time if we want to. If we wanted to pull a different time. So if we had integration events, Amal, good morning. Sorry. The purpose of having the screen sat right there was to be able to read it, but okay. My apologies. Hope you weren't there for long. Yeah, the purpose of that is if I've got the outbox working right and my application is not running correctly at that point, that I could still pull the original date time off of the event that I'm going to publish, the domain event that I'm going to publish the integration event from, and not have to rely upon a lie. So in this case, it's now. I'm deleting it now. It doesn't matter when it was deleted. I don't have that information anymore. Possible null reference. That's wrong because I don't want to get rid of that, because if I do that, it will then force that to be there. This is possible null. Okay, so let's proceed with this. Okay, it does mean that we have to kind of reflect back on, and there's a good reason why I didn't introduce my Kafka version yet into this, but this, yeah. Today's screen clarity way better, new theme. So we started the stream in a bit of a different way today. So I was explaining I bought a new monitor because I have been using a 24-inch 1080p monitor to code on for stream. It's the one I normally have right in front of my face here, and I've been struggling because it looks washed out for me, right? It looks very washed out. The other screen over this side that I'm currently looking at now is a 4K screen, but it's 60 hertz, which I don't like. When I'm scrolling, the refresh rate bugs me, right? So I wanted a better programming monitor that was bigger, had more space for me to play with, right? So being clever, I bought a 3440 by 1440 monitor, 144 hertz, thinking that'll work to replace the one I stream on. So I go to stream. I did a test. I started up a test stream about 20 minutes before this morning, and yeah, everything was very squished, right? It looked like I just squeezed the screen together because it was taking that and putting it down to 2560 by 1440. So I was this giant squishy thing in the right hand corner, and all the text was like 5 times taller. So I switched over to using the 4K screen, but then the color on the actual stream looked very washed out. So Esther and I worked together to try and color correct the stream. And I think it actually, now looking at it, looks a lot closer to what I actually see. And that is the joy of streaming. But thank you for commenting. It's good to know that it's also an improvement for you as well. Yeah, I was going into the challenges of streaming. You really can't have your own configuration very easily, because it will oftentimes conflict with other people. And every now and then, I do like using light mode for programming, but you can't do that when you stream because, yeah, it actually doesn't work very well for streaming. Okay, so our Kafka publisher, I'm not messing around with that right this second. Our Kafka publisher should handle this situation. Light mode in this economy? Yeah. If data is null, return null. That's an interesting one. How do I do that? Interesting. Oh, byte.empty. Was there an empty there? That's not a thing. That's not a thing, Copilot. You just give me what I want to say. There we go. Array.empty of byte. There we go. We need to guard for that, right? The annoying thing here is I'm not going to be able to unit test that because there's no unit test around this piece, and there's testing this would be hard. An integration test would fit better, but I have no integration test and I have no reason for deleting anything right now. So all I'm doing right now is writing code that I know I need to do, and now at least if it breaks, I'm somewhere closer to the solution. Connie, good day. How are you doing? Copilot does that in Golang all the time. Yes, it would be nice if classes were a thing, Copilot. Please can. Yeah. Yeah. The whole chat thing, the chat GPT AI stuff has really kind of got a little strange. Okay. So we don't need this, right? This is not a thing anymore, right? We don't have an event ID now because, yeah, it's not a thing. So again, this now needs this doesn't need the identifier attached to it, but for completeness I do want to explicitly say it's the identifier, right? So that would be the nullable version, that will be the version here, and this now should identifier equals result identifier. So that should still function. Other things will be broken, but yeah. Yeah. So in this case, tenant.identifier. I have no idea what I just typed. Yeah, Copilot is funny. So I was saying before, yesterday I was talking about GPT. I was in Apex's stream and someone was in there tinkering with, saying they were tinkering with GPT stuff, and sent me on a complete diversion down GPT emote things. So I actually did create, using GPT, 2 new emotes for the stream, which are on the tier 1 sub. Whether they're good or not, I don't know, but I'm trying to do things to add to the content of the stream, right? I am trying to change it up a little bit and make sure. So we've got yes and huh. Those were GPT generated. Apart from one of them, my hair looks red, and the other one looks more brown. But they look pretty close, in theory. The originals had text underneath, but Canny was just brutal and was like, no, they look horrible. They did look bad because you couldn't read the text, and even clicking it, it was not very obvious. I kind of put her and yes across the bottom, and learned that GPT had to be told many times how to spell the word success. It made it Success. And I was like, no, that's spelt wrong. So it made it Succeess. It's like, no, that's still wrong. I know, Kenny. I understood. I'm not actually being upset over it. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't know what it's doing. It's just dropping letters in there, and hopefully they're close to a word. Yeah. I appreciate the feedback, honestly, Kenny. It was necessary. Okay, so now our messages have an ID. They have a correlating ID as such, because the we broke a unit test. Because the yeah, a correlating ID, because the identifier that we use will be consistently that identifier. Now, the one thing I don't like about that is that each area I publish from, I could potentially still publish the wrong identifier, and that's a challenge. So how would I do that? Hmm. I have an idea, but I don't want to go into that right this second. By the way, you asked me what's up. Before I found out that my dog is destroying a plastic cup, I did hit my head against frequencies. Before I found out that my dog is destroying a plastic cup, I hit my head against frequencies and math problems and general EEG understandings. Fun stuff. Nice. Nice. Well, at least you can stream now because now you're back at work and you don't have to. That EEG stuff is way too big brain for me. That's nope. Nice. Okay, so what we're saying here is in the arrange the tenant user repository, it will return an event, and the problem is we've said dot new GUID, right? Yeah. Okay, let's make sure that tests pass. Okay, they still pass. The fact that I just changed the signature of an event and it still passes. No, that's fine. That is okay. Okay. It's too big for me until I read a lot and understand it, but the math behind it, bah, ever heard of a Butterworth filter? No. No, you're getting into brain things, into brain waves and stuff like that. That's the really hard stuff. That's why I don't. That's why I'm not game dev, because the math scares me. Good morning, Zesty. We'll call you Zesty. How you doing? Welcome. It's filtered to reduce the points in a curve without affecting the form too much. Okay, so kind of noise reduction style. I can never do game dev. I do machine learning, and that's already too much math. Yeah, and I don't want to shut you further. Oh no, it's fascinating stuff, Kenny. I just don't understand. I don't think I could contribute in a conversation about it. There's a challenge there. So, yeah, that's if you haven't, there's plenty of people in here. and because I'm using this monitor, I can actually use the actual keyboard. Kanye is doing Godot development, but also doing all sorts of cool stuff because he's a VTuber. He created an avatar that it moves around and speaks. He's got a little Kenku that runs across the screen and eats up the emotes and stuff. So he uses Godot, and it is. I would highly recommend going and checking Kanye's stream out. It's very entertaining. And he's about to do stuff with EEG stuff. So can't recommend that enough. I've spent a lot of time in game dev streams recently. The, yeah. Okay, so we have a event. So what I've been doing is I've been putting these events on the system, even if we don't need them. Right. The reason this sparked my the reason this sparked my focus was because I was getting into the idea of needing in the ticket system. I need a bit more information, right? So the ticket system is great, but if I needed to delete a user or I need to remove a user from a tenant, I don't have that information, right? So that's actually what sparked that entire thing, is because that tenant user identifier wasn't present. But now what I've just done is I've now changed the event structure. That has a knock-on impact, right? Oh, your avatar is not trash. I watched the modeling of that. You took a lot of time in that, and you only need to watch a VOD of your stream to see how cool that is. So I've modified my event. I've changed how my events actually function, right? But I haven't changed anything about the consumption. I haven't changed anything about how they save or whatever. And this would be the issue in doing this sort of stuff. When you're doing distributed computing like this, I've just made an impact by changing one piece of my system, right? If this isn't a shared code base, that event doesn't look the same now, right? I've changed the structure, I've changed the style, I've changed everything about it, and that's where ultimately schema would come in, right? But I need to change this now a little bit more, right? Because update tenant user, this command now needs to take an identifier, right? And I need to use that identifier in here somewhere. So for those new joining the stream, I am doing a lot of coding. I am doing a lot of different things. The stream is not necessarily about me being productive on this. If you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. If you have personal stuff that you want me to divert and look at, that's a different thing. But if you have questions about what I'm doing, the ideas, the concepts, you know, the specific, if you have feedback, if you want to talk about what we're doing, you're more than welcome to ask. You know, it's not a let me do my stuff. I'm not like focused and need to get this done, right? This is for me, this project, but it is not necessarily one that I won't stop doing to answer questions and discuss. So, so ZSD, obviously, I know that you're relatively new in software development. Don't be intimidated if you're still around. You can ask questions. There is a Discord. If anyone wants, is it there? Does it work? Can someone click that and test it? That does still get into my Discord. I'd appreciate that. Can you explain what the application is doing overall? So this application is an agile project management tool. Basically, I need to find a better list of actual tools. I have seen and used a few of them, but if you think about Trello, Trello's kind of light version of this, Jira, and larger applications, all for tracking work. What I believe is that there is some different ways we can handle those pieces, right? Opening up communications, making sure we're relaying information as things change in the system. So what I'm building out is very much a version of those tools that is focused on communication and transparency, and not relying upon people to say, "Hey, could you go and check on that," etc. So that's what this application is all about. Right now, it is it is mainly closed. I open source some components around the edges as we do them. But for the most part, this will be a project I intend to make a product. So that's the journey you're joining me on, right? You're joining me on the journey of, can I actually make a product and can I release a product? Which is intimidating as a thought. If you have questions, how can I transform a delta theta stream to usable values, and what does it mean that it spikes and can be positive and negative too? Yeah. Good morning, Apex. How are you doing? I had that exact same question. Okay, so what I've done is I've actually just changed my schema on my work items, which I now need to rename tickets, by the way, to align better, right? Work items, we'll call that work ls tickets. I am creating separate schema per per they're not microservices, per monolith. They're not necessarily monoliths. They're a little cleaner than the word that I associate with monolith, but per component right now. We'll go with components, right? So tickets, tenant management, teams, these are components of my system. I have events and domain events, etc., being published, and integration events, publishing information between these, which we will be expanding on very quickly in the next couple of days, mainly because I want to prototype what it looks like to see what tenant means here. So a tenant is a tenant represents an organization, essentially, right? So if you sign up for a product, right, and you can bring other people along with you, your information is grouped somehow, right? Normally that's called tenancy. So your data is separate from my data. If I'm working for a different organization, our data is separated. Normally that's referred to as tenancy. So that's kind of where the tenant idea comes from. So a tenant user is a user that is assigned to a tenant. A user can exist in my system and appear on multiple tenants, but they, the data they see per tenant is data they're associated with, right? So they're not going to see tenant A's data if they're logged into tenant B. So it's a separation of that data, either physically or logically in the actual code. So for what that means for the ticket system is, it means that all the tables have a tenant ID on them, right? So any data that needs to be tenanted or respect the tenancy will have a tenant ID, and you will only see data for that. The tenant ID is tracked through by the user. So when the user logs in, they're assigned the tenant ID they need to be logged into. So if a user goes to log in and has multiple tenants, it will trigger a prompt in the ultimate version, right? It will trigger a prompt to say, hey, you actually have 4 tenants. Which one do you actually want to log into? And when they select that, it will set the tenant they're assigned to in their user profile in Auth0. then they'll when their token refreshes, when they next make a request, their tenant will be set, and they'll be able to then just see data for that tenant. So logging out will reset that tenant, and yeah, and if they have that tenant still when they log in, they'll be able to change their focus. But it means that the data is associated to them under one tenant. Hopefully that was clearer than I think I made it sound at times. Ultimately, I will have to figure out some diagrams here for this project, for me and for anybody else joining it, right? Because it's starting to already. You can see the expansion of the project is starting to grow, quite unwieldy. So tickets have a tenant identifier. There's no need for these to change. Tenant users, this is where it's going to change, right? Identifier, unique identifier. Still something wrong with that design that's triggering me somehow. So what is that? What is that triggering me for? No. Okay. We're going to go with that for right this second. So we need an identifier on there. In tenant, our identifier is our identifier. So we're good there. Ticket notes. So a ticket note has a ticket ID. A ticket is assigned to the tenant, so we don't need a tenant explicitly on this because it can only point to a note that is in a tenant. So for this right now, this design doesn't have a problem. This user identifier, again, that is going to be for that user assigned to that tenant. So we can still join on tenant users to validate this user can see these tickets. So some of this will have to evolve as we get to actually querying the data, to validate that it is right. But in theory, I want to do development. I don't want to do the integration testing, but I'm starting to get this nagging feeling that spending a great deal of time getting some integration tests up and running here, to validate the APIs and stuff, is going to be way better off now than it is later. So maybe I'll put a bit of time into researching that. But either way, when I go to say, hey, get tickets, get notes for me, or show me notes, etc., my user identifier, I'm not relying solely upon having those IDs coming in the user. It still needs to be validated, which is why I'm taking the time to publish this information on the system, right? You can't just randomly see data. So permissions, etc., are one level, but also just because you have the tenant identifier in your token doesn't mean that that is going to work 100%. Because if this user ID isn't assigned to this tenant, then it's not going to show you any data, is the goal. So let's drop this database, right? Let's take these scripts. Let's work items. We rename that. Well, yeah, that's fine. Okay. It creates a project. Nice. So we will. Okay. There was a way of doing this, I'm pretty sure. SQL Server. The default session. There you go. Okay. We need that in here. That in there. That in there. That in there. That's that. That's that. There's already an object named. Oh dear. Deflux, good morning. How are you doing? That is. There's already. Oh, because I'm copying and pasting. Don't copy and paste. Make sure you write your code and check it. Ticket. Okay. Primary key's right on that one. Okay. So we have LS tickets, DBO default schema, tables, tenants, tenant users, tickets, ticket notes. Okay, that's good. We'll worry about that in a second. Work items, that needs to be tickets. So what I had originally done, by the way, the reason I'm renaming this from work items is because originally what I'd done is I'd actually called them work items because I intended in the initial version for everything to kind of live under this thing and not categorize them. As I've started to grow this, I've started to realize that there's probably a lot of behavior that are in tickets that are not in planning items and therefore stories. Yeah. Hola, estoy bien esta mañana. ¿Cómo estás? So let's do event the identifier there. That gets passed through. I believe I did do some tests. Domain test, application test, concerning support tickets. Yeah, I didn't actually test these two pieces yet, so that's bad of me. So let's make sure we fix that now. Application test, domain test, application tests. Concerning, update tenant. And good. Complicated, e.g. mathematics. Use English. Contrario probably against or contrary to. Yeah. Believe it or not, my wife is a Spanish teacher, by the way, and I don't know Spanish, so I can kind of muddle through some words so I understand what default said, but yeah. Okay. But it is an English stream, so uh, yeah. Okay. So when tenant does not exist, right? Back to this style again. We have a fact. Tenant is created, right? Um, this is a challenging one, right? So yesterday we kind of talked about um, with water, drink water. So for those who weren't here yesterday, there is a project that we are doing on stream. Um, Tell me I set it up. Did I do it? Yes, I did. Okay. I was trying to set some things up to try and make things a little easier today. Um, so yesterday, we started, or on Monday, we started working on a project called Water Drink Water. It is an application that is meant for helping you stay accountable for your water consumption. I know there are lots of apps out there that do this. That is not the point. The point is, it's an application we can develop on stream. The code is all available. We can discuss architecture, we can discuss practices, and the ultimate goal would be an application where you can add friends and they can say, hey, you haven't drunk any water yet, right? Not competition. Competition for drinking water, bad, dangerous, right? We do not want to say, hey, I've drunk 24 ounces of water. How much have you drunk? Right? No, it's towards your goal for the day. How much have you progressed, right? So, yeah. White Panther, good afternoon. How are you doing? Um, for those who may not know, White Panther, which I highly doubt. White Panther is an awesome streamer, does all sorts of cool stuff, all sorts of educational stuff on stream. Very worth going watching if you haven't. Procrastinating from real work. I've done that a lot recently. Mr. Ranhorn, good day. How are you doing? Okay, so yeah, Water Drink Water is an open source app. We will work on it 2 days a week. And the idea of that is it's one application that we can all share and tinker with. And we've had a lot of good discussion. The first 2 days of that, it was um, it was a lot of fun. I see a new profile pic and it makes it exciting to do a rebrand. Yeah, I've wanted to change some things. I don't really have the money to spend on trying to get people, so I did add. I was showing before. These are GPT generated emotes, right? These are the new emotes that I added yesterday, and these are GPT generated. Um, I now realize why you really need to hire somebody who knows what they're doing, because consistency across the brand um, would be good, right? And I do want to lean into the gamer thing, right? That is something that I do enjoy doing. If you spend any amount of time here, you know about my games. Um, so yeah, and then what you can see all over the walls behind me, right? So the gaming thing is something I want to do, and the TBD just works perfectly for that. But yeah, those are GPT generated. The logo that I've replaced on the front of the actual little badge on the stream and the YouTube channel, yeah, they're all GPT generated. It took me an hour and a half of trying to convince it, and I was saying before that I spent many minutes trying to describe how to spell the word success to it because it could not spell it. Even when I said it's spelt this way, it still put um, all sorts of funky spellings of the word success there. So, yes. I'm not sure how much longer you'll be streaming, but can I request a raid for later because I'm on a mission to get the streamer to their follow goal and they have 9 left and will not rest until it's reached. Absolutely. Putting on a Bing chat to generate new. Yeah, it can work. It's just really challenging. Yeah, just let me know who. We'll raid out. I'll be going for about another 35 minutes, but if they're streaming, then yeah. Absolutely. That's a lot of S's. Yeah, absolutely. No worries. Andreas Sastev. Okay. Streaming now, right? Yeah. Yeah, Claw. Okay. Well, we'll drop it by 1 already, so we'll leave that up. Okay. I believe it doesn't matter what you're programming in, right? So I don't mind like rating game developers, rating other people. I think rating is definitely something that's useful and you should do, and it's just good community building, right? So I have no issue with doing it, and I will always take the suggestion. Deflux normally has a pretty good, solid set of suggestions for people to stream to raid, and I've met a lot of people just through raiding people who have been suggested. So yeah. So anyway, so the numbers in this stream have jumped up slightly since I last said it. But if you are new to the stream, the point of the stream is kind of coding, but it's also about asking questions, discussion, learning, growth, etc. So I have been developing for a long time, and the code that you will see will not necessarily look very simple if you're new to development. But it doesn't mean you can't ask a question. It doesn't mean I'm not willing to stop and pause and explain something if I can. If it's a concept that doesn't make quite easy sense using it the way I'm doing it, I'm happy to break out and write some simple code to explain a concept. These are not things that I disagree with doing, right? The stream is about growth, and I want to learn, I want to get better, and I'm not going to get better if I squash other people's desire to improve or to learn. So although it's not a necessarily beginner friendly stream, I have actually got some feedback recently that people are a little bit intimidated to talk in the stream sometimes. Feel free. Do not worry that you have to be, an experienced developer to just be able to contribute in the stream. That said, I'm going to write some code. Yeah, asking questions is always helpful. There's no harm in asking questions, and it's helpful. Teaching builds mastery. Yeah, and also I kind of see it as teaching also builds better programmers, because I'm sure we've all worked in code bases that were like, what were they thinking? Why were they writing this code? Who wrote this code? Let me go find them, right? We all have complaints about other people's development, but then, if we're not willing to say, here's how we get better, yeah, who wrote this? Oh no, it was me. The other day we found some code. I was kind of explaining it today. I found a piece of code that I'd written and I'd switched the variables, and rather than try and cover it up or pretend I didn't do it, I just kind of laughed and was like, oh, whoops. I've been doing this for a while. It doesn't mean I can't make a mistake. I'm not perfect. So anyway, let's get this. Let's get this moving on. That's not what I want to write. What I ultimately want to write there is that the repository did call add on the tenant. So Let's do private I repository of tenant. Tenant repository. And tenant repository dot received dot add async. Arg is tenant. Tenant goes to tenant identifier is tenant identifier. No, that's not going to work. That is it. Private GUID. What's that? Okay. So that's what we want to test when the tenant does not exist. I have a style of unit testing, if you haven't seen it before. This is evolved from something Mr. Anhorn kind of did, I believe, which I really liked. I latched onto. No, I don't need to do that because I've inherited from that. I just override the ones I want. But the idea is that arrange. Don't know why I don't make them abstract. They should be implemented all the time. The arrange act style thing, I kind of evolved it from something you did a long time ago. I don't know if you still follow this, but I kind of have the arrange and act in my constructor, and then my test is just my assertion, not the arrange act assert. I kind of evolved that from something you did a few years ago because I kind of liked it. It made sense to me, and I like having just the assertion in the test. It makes it very, very readable for me. Yeah. But I picked it up from a unit testing because it makes sense to me. So tenant repository equals a substitute for. So I'm using n substitute for my mock. Chat or Copilot is deciding it knows better than I do. So that's not what I want though. So yeah. When tenant does not exist, we call add. So our system under test, or our subject here, is our update tenant dot handler. Now, I'm not calling this create tenant handler or register tenant handler or whatever. I'm calling it update tenant handler, and the reason being is I don't know what state the tenant is in. Right? This event comes in, and technically what could happen here is because I'm going to publish the tenant all the time. I'm not going to publish the tenant created. I'm not going to publish the tenant updated or whatever. I'm going to publish the tenant. So I don't know what state they are in. It means that this system can kind of self-align, and if it gets new data, that will come in. Apex, thank you for the luck. So that's why this is update handler, not create or register or whatever, because I don't know whether I've seen this tenant before. I just know that I'm going to update them, and it's up to that handler to decide whether it needs to create the tenant or whatever. So yeah, it's very similar. I will be refactoring all my game server tests today, so get ready for more pain. Yeah, I passed out in my chair last night. I just was so tired. I was like, don't. So I think I missed the end of your stream because I was sat there watching and just nodded off. I had a cup of tea. It was nice and warm. I'm like, I'm done. Okay, so subject equals new update tenant handler. That takes our tenant repository. No, not a tenant identifier. And then our act here is going to be our, yeah, we're just going to have to put the get result in there. Let's make no magic strings lying around. And private const string tenant name equals tenant name. Thanks. Hello. Welcome back. Hope you're well. Yeah, I got the non-test compiling it on I have not tested it yet, so it probably does not work. The challenge of upgrades. Although I will say that upgrading to .NET 8 from like .NET 5, .NET 6 was much simpler for me on things than upgrading from framework to .NET Core, etc. Those were not good days. Yeah. Doing great. What about you? I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It is Wednesday. The 3.1 before time. Yep. Yep. We have evolved. Okay, so let's run our unit test. Let's see if this passes. Yay, it works. When tenant exists, fact tenant is not tenant is updated. I didn't do something there as well. I also did not validate that the name of the tenant is also correct. Creating the tenant is not just specifying the identifier, right? So realistically, because I'm testing this after the fact, here's what I should do, right? And I think I was saying this to Apex the other day, is it's sometimes worth it to just validate that your test is going to do what it should do. So go in and break your code and validate your test fails for the reason you expect. If it doesn't, your test is not valid, right? So expected to receive a call matching. So this is valid, right? I expected to receive a call matching this signature and didn't receive a matching call. So by commenting out that, I expected to see that error. I got that error. We're good. I can safely say that test is doing what it should do. That were that to be removed, it would yeah. Now I'm not going to test the negative cases here. I'm going to test that the things that should happen happen. There's nothing saying that I couldn't do a create. What I could say here is actually a way of doing this. I think is no other actions. Let me think about the name. But what I could try and validate, I believe, I could try and narrow it down that I only received an add, right? So if I received an update or whatever as well, then that would throw an error, right? Because I shouldn't expect to see anything other than add. But I'm not quite sure how to write that this second. But that's really what I could do to firm up that test. I could also make sure that there is only the add called. There is nothing else. Again, I could say does not update, but that's documenting that you could update in that situation. So you've got to be careful with unit tests. If you treat them as the documentation they should be, then documenting I didn't call update doesn't really give you much, because you shouldn't call update. It's an add. So yeah. Here I repository of tenant repository dot received dot update async arg dot is tenant tenant goes to tenant identifier. Yeah, let's create those things now. Private, get rid of that and that. This is an arrange act. All of a sudden I went into C++, I don't know why. Yeah, that'll work. No, that Hmm. Yeah, okay, that was. Um, this is something I've struggled with. So what I'm doing here is I'm using Ardalis's specifications library, and I'm building this specification. I am finding it very hard to define how to search for these. So I'm saying, hey, if you get a call to single default given a single result specification of tenant, then it's valid. So I could give it any specification. Here I can't validate the actual specification I'm passing it. So I've got to kind of figure that out. I can't specificity here breaks. I can't because it has no parameters. It's a constructor. So I've got to learn more about how to do that properly. And any cancellation token. So if I call that with a single result, if I'm asking for a tenant, right, then I will return this tenant. And then this goes in my act. No, that is my subject. That is right. Okay, so I have update tenant handler. That's my subject. I can pass it to the repository. In my act, I'm going to update that tenant, right? So what I want to do here is I want to actually track original private const string expected expected tenant name. Again, I'm naming these very clearly so that if I see them, they are. Okay, so this will return the original tenant name, and in here I should pass the expected tenant name, right? And the outcome would be that I have an updated tenant. There we go. Okay, so that's roughly working. It's not perfect, but it's a ground on which to build, right? And so here's a challenge right now. Second, I don't know if the application builds and runs, and that's something that I haven't actually been able to verify for a long time. You'll see there's going to be a lot of commits, 100 files, because I've moved everything around, 27 unversioned files as well. I've moved things around. Apparently, I created tickets as an actual Blazor app. So I've messed that up. Yes, I did. I created it as a Blazor app. Go away. Smoking Squiggly, welcome. Hope you're well. What are you building? A ticket management system? An agile project management system in the long term, starting with tickets. Not normally done. Normally tickets are kind of an afterthought or they're a separate system. What I'm building is an application that would integrate those things together. So what I'm trying to build is a system whereby things start and are transitioned rather than separated and linked to and integrated from, etc. So I'm building the tickets component out first and hopefully working towards promotion of those tickets into something evolved so that comments and notes, etc., go along when it becomes a story and transitions properly. So that is what I am building. Yeah, I haven't thought out everything yet. I've still got some sit down and note taking to do to go through some of those things because when I say them out loud, things become a bit more challenging. I also frequently use Agile specification things. Yes, I hadn't actually used it until recently, to be honest. But I lent into it. I was like, okay, how do we do this? Oh, it's a little easier than I thought it would be. It has triggered a bit of a refactor on the system because or rather I realized that if I was going to use specifications, then there was certain design decisions that got taken away from me. So we've just spent a reasonable amount of time realigning the application to more clean architecture and applying some design decisions there that have helped. So yeah, it's progressing. But I've worked in enough groups now to see the pain points, and I'm trying to put my spin on project management and streaming the bits that might be interesting. That's just me removing the Blazor components. I don't want that app to have a UI. It should be an API. That might be why it was failing earlier on. Let's see if it runs. A run would be good. Thank you for the follow, Smoking. Appreciate it. Welcome. I knew that would happen. There is a, let's see if it was, Discord. If you are interested in joining, I update when we stream there. Also, continued conversations off stream. Interesting. Why are you getting to... it's consuming the event. Unable to find required services. What? Those are two separate errors. Those were two separate problems. Tickets, that's because I started up as a Blazor file. I don't want that. I want to make sure that this is that is because I'll have to redo that. I'll have to redo all that. It would be the safest way of dealing with this piece. The tenant. So we are using Kafka, SQL Server, Entity Framework Core right this second. We have got some work in there for Couchbase, but right now that has been pulled out, and Tickets was based in Couchbase originally. But some challenges with how to effectively manage and utilize Couchbase prompted me to make a practical decision to move away. Sorry. So this will probably be these two. I've broken these. When these start up, they're going to try and access the topics. Those topics don't exist. They are not set to create the topic. Therefore, liquid sky dot tenants. We do not need partitions. We do not need scale out on this version. So we're good there. Delete that topic. Delete stream. And we can delete that one. Delete stream. I apologize if the font is actually going to be ridiculously tiny on that screen, isn't it? Let's see if we can improve that for everybody. You have a settings. Turn on light mode. Everyone gets blinded. Settings. There is no font size. Okay, well, we are learning that this tool might not be the best one for the stream. So I cannot increase this font size, and because I'm streaming from a 4K monitor, scaling to 2560 by 1440, I would imagine that will not be very readable for anybody. Let's create that tenant, and this is liquid sky dot tenant. What did I call it? How did I name it? Tenant hyphen users. I can delete that one. Delete stream. Okay. So those topics exist now. So when the app starts up, it should find the topics. Oh, we're almost at 750 followers. That is incredible. Okay, so we've still not got that. I would imagine my next step is yep, copy always. So I was starting two consumers, and they were not. There was no application configuration, so everything kind of fell apart there. That's problem number one. So what I'm doing here is I'm fighting too many things at once by having multiple projects running. Or what my Zoom script is one that is all built into OBS features. I'm not streaming off the same machine. I dual PC stream, so I can't utilize anything that's OBS. So what I should do here is start the tickets project on its own, right? Or start individual projects to make sure they're up and running. The tickets project, I would imagine, is not going to work properly because I would bet it's not set up correctly. So if I go over to yeah. So I'm going to go to the repo for this. I love how if you're a solo dev, you can't pin your application to a private application to your front page. But if you're an organization, you can do. That is a weird, I don't know why that would be. So when I go into my application, when I go into GitHub and I go into the actual list of things, what I'm doing right now is I'm just going and getting the program CS for the work items stuff, and I'm just going to copy everything that is below because that's really what I need, and then I can worry about the specifics afterwards. I don't know why, but I deleted it before I got to, because everything should still be there. Okay, so that's the tickets. Oh, that's interesting. Validator. Ticketing DB context. Did I call it? Did I really call it tickets DB context? No. That's because I'm in the wrong thing. Okay. Let's try that once more. Let's be in the right application. Everything's called program CS. Everything's that'd be why it wasn't going to work. Ticket DB context. Hey, look, it's like if you know what you're doing, it gets easier. Tickets, and then this I think is a ticketing repository. Yes. So there is a challenge here in so much as my naming of the project, my naming of the grouping, the component, and everything is the exact same name as the thing I do within that thing. So that's why that's the ticketing repository, because I don't want to call it the tickets repository or the ticket repository, because then it suggests that that is specific for the ticket, right? And it's not. It's the actual repository. That's actually a base class that all repositories in this selection of tools will use. So I could have a repository of tenant user, a repository of tenant. So it's just a challenge of naming, and but considering the behavior that's going to go into the ticketing component here, I could rename this section ticketing. Might make more sense. I could rename it support, whatever, but it's that support might be too general. I am actually focused on the tickets component of this thing right now, so I'm going to keep reviewing that and rethinking that. I think I found a good generate profile image. Going to update that later tonight. Nice. I got some really good images out of GPT. There's some that I just couldn't use because they just don't mean anything for the stream, but yeah, there was some good stuff. Okay, so let's try and run tickets. Let's see if it actually runs. Nope. We don't have an application configuration, do we? App settings. I bet this is not set to copy. Oh, it is. So what was that erroring on then? Let's have a go. Let's actually have a go at reading the error message. Okay. Directory not found exception. Line 16. How could directory not be found? Oh, www root. Why is it trying to copy www root? Did I have... No, I have no www root in here. Starting to feel I'm going to have to recreate this application. Because it's just not configured for... Why would that be... Okay, let's remove that. That can go away. That can... Actually, I can delete these profiles entirely. I don't need anything but that one. IS settings, I'll leave it in there, but I don't think I need that either. Unhandled exception, physical file path provider. Do I have a bin object folder sort of challenge here? Let's have a look. Bin and obj. You go away. Rebuild. Assets file. Found a NuGet package to restore. There we go. It was a leftover bin and object folder. Registers 6 endpoints. There we go. Okay, so fast endpoints is working. Tickets would essentially be working, but we'll get to the next part. Let's start these up. So these are the pieces that obviously I've been reconstructing, right? These are not things that I've been able to test. Running, do not have one for that. That's the consumers. Let's run that, and I bet that will fail. There we go. Unable to resolve type service with type mediator while attempting to activate. Okay, so that is a challenge of the configuration not being configured. Yeah, that would make sense. Services.add mediator. No, that would definitely make sense why you can't do that. Let's try that again. Has been registered. No service for type. Tenant user receiver has been registered. Oh, yes. Yes. That's fine. Services that are transient. Tenant user receiver. I think at this point I probably should, in here, when I add the receiver, so I have the builder, I have the, oh yeah, it's because I've built it slightly differently. This takes the provider in. So add dispatching Kafka consumer, I give it a builder, and then I add a singleton for event consumer in which I create the builder and then configure the builder. So when I'm adding those receivers, yeah, that's a design challenge. Because what would be nice is to say, hey, when you add this, just register the dependency. There's no point. This is duplicate effort that I shouldn't have to do. But I'm not going to do that right this second. I'll fix that later. Okay, so let's run that once more, and then we'll see where we are. It looks like it's running. That's a good sign. Okay, so let's make sure the full stack will start when I do the compound. So compound is run all these projects at once, right? So it'll start the API gateway, which is unnecessary right this second. It'll start the placeholder login site so I can actually get a token to do the registration part. It'll start the tenant management, it'll start the tickets, and it'll start the consumers. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that. Everything should start up. Then I'm going to try and register a tenant. If it works, my receiver should okay, we need to stop that one. That needs to be called tickets. We don't have the DB context set up in here yet. That will create a problem. Because that application stuff will run in the context of that. So I need, yeah, I removed it. I shouldn't have removed it, right? So I've got the repository, but I don't have these pieces, right? So I need the tickets repository, tickets DB context, ticket DB context, and that's tickets. Interesting. That's that. That's that. Okay. So I've still got the other projects running. That should be fine. Now let's start this one up again, so I can debug this one. It will add in, so I don't have to worry about restarting everything. Rider in a recent release did you can start multi-projects, but I don't know why they didn't embrace this. Shubham, welcome. Hope you're well. Good work. Thank you. Appreciate that. I need to figure out some links and stuff for the YouTube. But on the YouTube, the description below does have access. Does have a link for the Discord. It does have a link for the repositories, the shared, etc. You're more than welcome to join and continue the conversation outside of that. Personal projects. That's that. That's that collection. Liquid Sky. Tenant management. Okay, here we go. So, tenant management. What should happen here? We have nothing in this database. So this will be one test and then done, pretty much, and I'll have to fix the rest. So if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. What should happen is I should register a tenant. I should register an address. I should register the address with the tenant. The same for the user. A user should get created in auth0. Events should fire and tenant user should get created in the ticketing system. If that works, first go, I'm patting myself on the back. One more try. We're going to call this person Griffin Mole. Gmole. Okay, first step. Does this succeed? This succeeds. That's a good sign. We should have a tenant. We should have a tenant user. We should have a user. We should have a tenant address. And we should have an address. We should have a notification outbox message, set of events. So these events are domain events, not integration events. These domain events are published. And one processed, but the rest did not. Unless I've got it on the 10 seconds silliness still. I did have a bug in a version of this library that does have it wait for 10 seconds before it processes the next, but it looks like the rest failed. So that is understandable. So tenant management, yeah, we had a failure. Try insert. Error while publishing message, backing off for 30 seconds, right? It's going to keep trying. Try insert into what? Kafka, publish integration, handled, tenant was registered. Kafka publisher line 23. Why isn't that debugging? That's the question. But the beauty of what I've just done there is that I can still run those events, right? I can still start this application up when I fix that bug, and those events will still get processed, right? So it will still continue to retry. I don't believe anything published over to here, no, right? So Kafka, tenant user, none of this worked. So the only event that got processed was one that didn't actually need to go anywhere, I think. Notification outbox was address, yeah, address created, right? So this tenant was registered event was trying to do something. Tenant was registered came in with this message, right? So we can do open in value editor, reformat. One more try, company name. So we have a tenant identifier. And then our application picked it up. Our tenant subscriber, tenant was registered. This hit. And this failed. So we can put a breakpoint here. Let's just give it one go. I really do need to start winding up. Notification. So this is now being fired in from that outbox, right? So this event is still there. It's not lost. I didn't lose anything in that failure. I just lost the ability to publish, it seems. So I get the tenant. Here's my tenant back. Yep, there's no domain events on it, correctly so. And then I have this identifier. So this is the first event, right? So this is going into this publish async. That's the problem. We go in here. There's a problem. There we go. That's why. So what I've done is, and this is why it was a problem before, I've made it so that it'll look up that type in this configuration and it will give it the tenant to go to, right? So this is tenants and this is tenant users, right? I'm no longer putting the event name in the topic. I'm putting the, right? I'm putting the fact that it is an integration event right now, right? So those events live down in messaging events, tenant integration event and tenant user integration event. Not sure whether they're going to get called that way in the long term, but what we should see now is this should actually succeed. Right, so we get here, get here, get here, get here. We now have a topic, right? Not saying it'll pass, but it should succeed in that at least piece. So now we should have in our Kafka queues, we have a tenant and a tenant user. And I'll have to figure out a better tool for Kafka. Kafka tool is kind of rough looking, but this one is going to be tiny. But trust me, those messages there say the right thing. Also, more importantly, in the value here, I don't know if you can see it, the event source tells me the notification that triggered that event firing. So now I know where it came from. That's the goal of that. So let's just do it once, because I haven't started this project yet, right? I haven't actually run this. If we start the consumers up now, do they work? Probably not, but let's give it one go, because now I'm keen to see. Nope, errored. Cannot create a DB set for tenant because this type is not included in the model for the context. That would do it, right? That would do it. In my domain, no, my infrastructure, I have. Yes, I did. Yeah, we had this, and these are not included in the DB set. How you doing, Junicus? Tenant, tenant user, tenants, tenant users. Doing good. Nice. Good to hear it. Yes, I'm trying to clean up the branding a little bit, give some more stuff. I want to put more value into the stream, give some more kind of positive things. Have some emotes I added, GPT generated emotes, and the logo, the channel icon is also GPT generated. But I've also put that on the YouTube channel, so it is consistent. So if you don't know and you are in the stream, there is a YouTube channel that is linked in the panels below. Please like, share, subscribe, do all the fun stuff there. You know, that does help more people see the streams. YouTube does seem to do a pretty good job of actually injecting my streams into video suggestions. So I've been trying to get better at doing the tags and stuff like that, so people can pick them up. I am trying to make more shorts and stuff. I did one on Outbox last week, which I'd appreciate people having a look at if you get the chance. But anyway, let's finish up here. Unfortunately, my apologies, Junicus, but yeah, I didn't think that was going to work. Yeah, because it's trying to open the wrong database. That would be why. It's to the point now where I'm just kind of, I feel that I'm close, so I'm not giving up on it. But I do have a job to do that I'm going to get in trouble for not doing if I'm not careful. Oh, that ran. Let's see. Did we get the tickets? Did we get a tenant? No. Did we get a tenant user? No. But that doesn't mean anything, because the Kafka topic could be behind right this second. It can sometimes take a while for Kafka to catch up. But anyway, let's go right over to Andreas. Oh, it actually did try and run them then, and it failed. Okay, so I'll look at that afterwards. White Panther did ask us to go and raid over there. They are looking to a follow goal, and it looks like they're doing all sorts of stuff. So please join me in saying hi over there. I will return tomorrow. We'll continue on with this stuff. Thank you, Canny, for hanging out. Thank you for chatting and being here for it. So I appreciate that. And it helps if you use the right keyboard when copying and pasting. Doesn't it? Yeah. Can't just copy and paste random stuff. It doesn't work that way. That could have been very embarrassing. So let's go over there. Let's say hi. Thank you very much for joining. Smoking, thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining in. And yeah, have a great rest of your day all. And I will see you again tomorrow. Yeah, we'll continue on this. Yep, I got it. I'm going to fix that now. Take care all. Have a good one.